Welcome, friends. Pour your favorite cup of tea, coffee, or cocoa and settle in for Sips from the Sipp from the Utica Institute Museum. Sips from the Sipp is all about sharing the history of little-known people and places in Mississippi. We're serving up truth, justice, with a dollop of sass. I'm your host, Jean Greene. Today's episode is the sixth of a multi-part series of readings and discussions from the book Black Man's Burden. Joining me today is Mrs. Denise Taylor. Today, our guest on our program is Mrs. Denise Taylor. Ms. Taylor has a long connection to the Utica campus. She will explain a little bit about her connection in just a bit. But we're going to be discussing Chapter 3 of Black Man's Burden, and I want to say welcome, Denise Taylor.
Thank you. And today, as Ms. Greene stated, I am going to be discussing Chapter 3. I've been with Hines for about 19 years now, and I started out working actually at the high school, agriculture high school. And I worked with the Title I program under Eugene Fisher. But all of my siblings attended Hines Agriculture High School, and some attended Utica Junior College, as it was known, back in the day.
Yeah.
So I'm no stranger, to the Utica area. I've lived here all my life, and, this is where my family grew up, and this is where I have raised my children and my grandchildren as well. And this book, The Black Man's Burden, it is a really interesting book, and it's really kind of funny the way he tells his story.
Yeah.
The things that he talked about and his relationship with Dr. Booker T. Washington. He started out in Chapter 3, and he was talking about how in the beginning he was just basically trying to get to know Mr. Washington and his ways and the things that he did. But in him talking about him, like I know there was one incident in Chapter 3 where he talked about Mr. Washington came to him and said that he needed to go and speak with the attorney. And when he went to speak to the attorney, he told him, go right away and get the horse and the buggy, and we need to go and talk to the attorney. Well, they went, and it was a long journey. When they got there, and Mr. Washington left him outside until about 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And then he came back and told him, you go back and just leave the buggy here, and I'll bring it back when I come back.
Right.
But as it turned out, he didn't bring it back, and he ended up having to go back and get the horse and buggy the next day. But I guess he must have walked back.
Yeah.
And it was a long journey,
Yeah.
but it was just the little funny things that he did. And he talked about how it appeared that he never got angry with any of the students or let them see him being angry at them. But he had his ways of telling them what was right and what was wrong. Right. I guess teachable moments, but not out of anger or anything like that, or to degrade the students.
Right.
He talked about how I guess they had very little during that time. And if they were not allowed to waste food at the school, like one young man had put just a bunch of molasses on his plate.
That's right.
More than what he could eat. But he made him eat those molasses anyway. And so I just thought a lot of things that he talked about in this book was really, really kind of hilarious to me. Then he talked about how his inspiration, Mr. Holtzclaw's inspiration, was to become a teacher. He wanted to be educated, but he kept having these obstacles to come up that he was not able to fulfill what he wanted to do until later on in life. The first thing that came, he saved his money, and when he was about to go, he had saved up $100 from working with Dr. Washington, which he was actually his assistant. And the money that he had raised, he was saving it to get his education.
Right.
But then he ended up getting sick.
Right, that's right.
And when he got sick, he was sick for a while, and then he had to take that money that he had saved and pay for his hospital bill. So that set him back. Well, he saved up again.
Right.
Then his dad sent him a message and said, if you want to see me alive, you need to come right away. So he ended up going home to his parents, and his father died.
Right.
Well, he knew then that he had to stay with his mom to, try to help her. So he was able to get jobs. He even dibble-dabbled in politics for a while. And he, still didn't have any money, but he would teach on the side. He said he taught what he knew. He didn't have any type of certificate or anything in teaching, but he taught what he knew. And he said he must have been doing a good job. They didn't pay him money, but they paid him in things.
Right.
And so that's how he was able to help his family. Then later on, his mom remarried because she knew that, he wanted to be educated. So she remarried, and then that kind of freed him up to be able to go back to school. But he still didn't have any money. And also, he, in the politics area, he had got with some gentlemen. But anyway, they worked on...
Was that when they was in Georgia?
Yes, it was Carrollton County, I think it may have been. And he was saying that a lot of the black people wanted degrees or the certificates in teaching. And back then it was like certificates in the first grade, second grade, third grade, like that.
Right.
But he was saying a lot of them, had not been educated. So what they would do, if you knew somebody, then you would they just kind of put you in that room where they were taking the exam for the teaching certificate.
Right.
And actually they were cheating. And so he had...
Oh, that's right. I've forgotten about that part. Yes.
And so he was saying that they would just bring them in there and sit them down, and they would write 2 or 3 sentences, and then you take the papers up, and they were locked up overnight.
Right.
But overnight, somebody came in and replaced those papers that they had not written and took them out and put some good papers in. And so the people were able to get their certificates. Right. So he thought, well, this has to stop. And so he was able to get with somebody, I cannot remember the person's name, but anyway, eventually in that county, they were able to stop that type of cheating from happening. And so he really didn't like politics. He really didn't. His main goal was to be an educator. And so once he kind of got that settled, he didn't have any money, but he knew his mom was okay because she had remarried. So he said it was time for him to go back to school.
Right.
He went to, I think it was a mayor, Governor Atkinson or somebody. It was somebody that he had worked with. And they gave him the money. He asked for a loan, but they actually gifted him the money so that he would be able to go back to Tuskegee to get his education so that he could get his certificate and teach. And so that's what he ended up doing.
Good. That's right.
So
I got really excited about a couple of parts in there. One was when he was helping support the person who was running for office. And he did such a good job of writing a letter for him or whatever that helped the man. And so he had an ability.
he did.
The other one was when he was relating the story about the student that put more food on his plate than he could eat.
Yes.
Reminded me of my parents who said, if it's on that plate,
You gotta eat it.
you go eat it. I don't care how long you sit there.
You're going to eat it. Yes, and then there was one incident where he had to prove his trust.
Right.
And the guy had told he left money in his pocket intentionally. And he told Mr. Holtzclaw to, I think, do his laundry or press his pants or whatever. The man knew he had left the money in there. So he took the money out of the pockets and buried it in the ground. So when the gentleman came back and asked where was the money, he came back and he told him, he said, I buried it right here, and gave. So that proved his integrity by, him doing that. So Dr. Washington thought very highly of Mr. Holtzclaw because of his integrity and I guess, just how he was raised, his work ethics and his ability.
Right.
And the things that he could do. He wasn't just so educated from book smarts, but he had common sense wise. And then he picked up on a lot of things and ways from Dr. Washington. He picked up a lot of his ways. To me, he kind of studied him. And that's how he was able to, I think, be successful in doing the things that he was able to do here on this campus and to develop this school here. And it goes back, for me, it says a lot that this person came from Tuskegee, which when they talked about Tuskegee, he described it as not really being much of anything, but they were able to teach them how to make a living. And that's what he talked about that as well, about how in that community, when he had to help his family, he knew about farming and just taking a little of this and a little of that to make something from it. And I said, we have this institution, and for me, instead of us, and I know we couldn't keep it all because times are changing.
Right.
But we needed to incorporate some of this from the Black man's burden into our curriculum and teach our students, because you never know who it could have helped.
I'm glad you said that, Mr. Taylor, because when you were working with the dean of students here on campus,
Right.
I remember so well how y'all made it a point of seeing the human inside the student.
Right.
And understanding where the students came from, that not everyone came from the same background.
Right.
So that we had to, I know Dean Rush used to call them Pookie and Ray Ray.
Right.
We had to meet them where they were.
You got to meet them where they were. And another instructor that used to always say that is Miss Willie Mae Wilshire. And yes, there were curriculums and there were benchmarks that the students need to make. But she used to always say, how can you teach them up here when they are down here?
Right.
You got to meet them where they are and then bring them up to standards for them to be able to achieve that goal.
Right.
Because if they don't have that knowledge, you can't put them way up on a pedestal and they're not there.
Right.
So a lot of that, goes back to him as well, as far as I can see. And what really bothers me is that we did not, I feel like sometimes maybe we failed as not introducing some of his ways into the things that, that he brought here. And made this campus what it is today.
I know exactly where you're going with that, Ms. Taylor, and you are right. We have missed opportunities,
right,
where we could have incorporated the tenets and instructions of Black man's burden into all facets of curriculum. There have been instructors like Ms. Wiltshire, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Collins, who pulled from that book.
Right.
And try to get our students aware of where they come from, where the institution is, and how we have an expectation for them that they may not even have for themselves.
Right.
So I know what you're saying when you say we have students come in to us on a level comparable to what they had in the Black man's burden. When students would come with no funding to pay, they'd have a cow, a chicken, or some eggs.
Right.
And Holtzclaw didn't turn them away because all they had was a cow, chicken, and some eggs. He let them come on. Just as Booker T. Washington didn't turn Holtzclaw away.
Right. Because he didn't have anything.
He didn't have anything. They had only one suit. That was it.
Yes.
And wore it till it shredded.
Right. Right. That's
So he learned, he
brought to us in Utica what he was taught at Tuskegee and at Snow Hill, that you build people up, you lift the veil, you show them the potential of what they can be.
Right.
And I saw that exemplified in you and Dean Rush when y'all would work with the students, and I would be going, what are we doing? And you turn around and we see some of these students today
Right.
doing so much better than they thought they had the potential for.
Right.
And I wish we could continue that.
I wish we could too, because I see the downfall where we have so much killing and all of the, just everything in the community, and it's because a lot of them, they're uneducated. And then we look at the fact that, children are having children and they don't, they haven't had the background that they should have had. And so if nobody is teaching them, then that it's just trickling down the same type of mentality. So how can we expect them to do any better if they have not been taught?
Right.
And that's what he did. He reached out in the community, and when he came here to Utica, he got people together and he trained them and taught them the things that he knew, and they were able to farm and have better lives for themselves and their family. Right. And that's what Dr. Washington was teaching him, how to be better than, overcome the things that you had. He also mentioned when he talked about being sick, and he was saying one reason that he never disclosed what the sickness was.
That's true.
He just said that he was very sick for a while, but he alluded to the fact that, you go from a building with cracks in the wall.
Oh, yes, but he said that the good building was killing off folks.
Yes, yes.
That's right. That's right.
And then you come into this nice warm building, and so your body, I guess, had to adjust to the different climates.
Right.
And so maybe he was saying that he had no underwear or something. So, he, like I say, the chapters were really funny, the stories that he was telling, and I would advise anybody, if you haven't read it, to read it, because it's really a good book. I didn't read the whole thing, but that's my plan, to go back and read it all. But he talked about how he didn't have the underwear, and he understand that may have been where his sickness came from, because he was going from places that had cracks to places that was not insulated, or well insulated. And I guess maybe he was too warm or something. But like I say, I don't know if he had pneumonia or what he may have had, because it didn't say. But, it just goes back to today. I just feel like we could be doing more, because there are things that we could read this book and we could pull some things from this book and we could implement them in an updated way, I feel like, that could possibly help some of these students. And I'm going to say this, and if it doesn't need to be in there, you can edit it out. But the first thing that I see that should have taken place a long time ago is that instructors should not have been hired if they didn't know the story.
Oh, yes.
And the roots of where this campus came from. Because to me, that is what has ruined the campus, because people don't care.
Oh, yeah.
They don't care about the black man's burden and what he endured to get here and make this campus Utica Junior College, Hines Agriculture High School, and now Hines Community College.
It's interesting that you say that, because one thing that we hope to do, and we try to do through the Institute Museum, is we try to inform new staff and new faculty about the story. We introduce the book to them. We tell them a brief version of Holtzclaw's journey to get here, and we take them on a tour of the physical area, not just the campus, but the town as well. And some of them acclimate and some of them don't. I use myself as an example for that, because when I first came to Utica in 2000, seems like yesterday, but I had no concept of who William Holtzclaw was. I didn't know anything about Utica Institute or the Black Man's Burden, but there were people on campus who knew the story and had absorbed enough of it into their lives that they were living examples of what it could be. And I was receptive to the story. Now, to me, if you can tell someone and try to show them if they're not receptive,
Right.
then that burden is lifted from you and put onto the person who is not
receptive
to receive it.
Yes.
It would be great if we could include this story in our orientation.
It would be. It really would.
And I think it would be not just orientation for Utica, but orientation for the district, because all students need to know the entire story of what goes on.
Yes, and it would be, to me, it would be good if the entire district knew the background, because I feel like it's more that could be done. This story not only is kind of personal as well for me, because I can name family members. A. Caldwell, and you all may not know him, but he's family for me. He was one of Mr. Holtzclaw's scholars.
Oh, okay.
He taught him. He was on the outskirts of Utica, but he brought him in. He taught him about farming, and he leased property from a white man. And it was over 50 acres. And later on down the road, he was able to purchase that land.
Wow.
And, you know, Mr. Caldwell is deceased now, so is his wife, and they had one son. And he had a stepdaughter, but they are all deceased. But there are some other family members. But, you know, they did end up in the end losing the land. I can think back to right here behind the college. My dad and his siblings, they purchased the little bit spot that we have back there from Mr. Holtzclaw.
Wow.
He also taught my uncle and my dad about farming. And they used to farm right back here, well, across the street over here. They had cotton. And
we're talking across 18 of them?
Yes, for years when I was a little girl. And so he did a lot, and I'm sure that there are others, but those are two people that's personal for me.
Right.
So the whole history of the college, and I had not read the book, but I knew of him because it is, in a sense, family for us. That, you know, the lives that he touched and the things that he did, the knowledge that he brought. And some of those people were able to educate other people within the community.
Right.
To farming, and, you know, because back then, farming was the thing. If you were a farmer and had land, and you raised cotton, peas, corn, potatoes, or whatever, that was a living for your family.
Right. Your family didn't go hungry.
Right. So, you know, it's a personal thing for me. And I understand that it may not be for other people and they wouldn't have a concern for it, but, you know, it's history for me and my family.
Well, it's something that we're, as a group and as a community, we're getting back to that. We're getting back to, yes, you need to produce your own food so you don't go hungry when your store closes. You need to produce and provide a way to get money for your family that's not dependent on if the plant leaves. So many times that I heard it said, we didn't even know we were poor.
Right.
Because we had food, we had this, we had that. And it's now that we find ourselves in a food desert. We don't have a grocery store. We have to go miles and miles to get that need met. That you see the worth in Holtzclaw's dream and what he practiced, that you have to own your own land. You have to have your own home so you're not rented. And, you know, because as folks say all over the country, rent has skyrocketed.
It has.
Folks are becoming homeless that still have jobs,
Right.
because they can't pay rent. And if we go back to the points that Holtzclaw taught in his Black Belt Improvement Society, if we go back to the structures and the instruction that he gave farmers, I'm not saying everybody must go back to the land, but enough of us need to do it so that we can provide not only for ourselves, but help for that.
Right, for others as well. And that's what he did, you know.
Right.
He didn't just think about himself. He thought about others as well, and he shared what he knew. And that's another thing, you know, we need to not, you know, be so just caught up in self that we don't want to share information and teachings that we receive with other people to help them to prosper and to be able to do well.
Right.
So, yes.
So this book, it's not just something from 1915 that only talked about 1915. We can use these practices and tenets today. So for our students, Miss Taylor, you know, because I know you love the students.
I do.
How can, you know, we talked about making this part of the orientation, but how can we make this, do you think, live for our students? Do we need to live it ourselves? What do we need to do?
We need to live it ourselves, but, you know, I've heard people say teachable moments. So maybe in our association with the students, we can capture a minute where it's a teachable moment to share something with them that may hit home for them, and use that as a way to help them see that, you know, you may not be doing so well, but if Mr. Holtzclaw did it in this book, then, and it's a true story,
Right.
that maybe you can take something from it and use it to help yourself.
Right.
You know, so, you know, we have to find ways, I guess, to bring it to life for them.
Another thing, Ms. Taylor, I want to just throw out there for you is when I was a student in a community college many years ago, if I hadn't had someone reach out, take me by the hand and show me how to register for my class, what class I needed, what was the proper behavior when I was there. If someone hadn't shown me that, I wouldn't have known.
You wouldn't have known.
So how are we expecting these students to come in and operate without somebody instructing them? How are we expecting them to take up that cross or that mantle if we're not showing them how to do it? Because somebody showed us.
And we've got to get up, and that's what we have to do. We have got to take them. Sometimes you have to take them by the hand. You can make them independent, but you got to first teach them to be independent.
Right.
So instead of us saying, go on the computer and fill this out and do this, take them to the computer and show them. If they're on the street and not going to school, it's because their parents may not have been educated.
Right.
They may not know. So you approach them. There is a better way. Come on, let me show you. Sit down with them and help them to complete an application. And then tell them, I'm not going to leave you out here by yourself. I'm going to help you along this journey and be there for them. You don't have to, in a way, you do have to spoon feed them, but let them know that you are there for them. If they have a question, if they have a need, you know, we don't always have money, but I know that there have been times when I was in student services when students have needed and didn't have. And I went around just like Mr. Holtzclaw did, and I asked, do you have $1? You know, that we can do this for this student. And not all students are genuine, but it's just a chance that you have to take.
That's right.
And we take chances with our own kids.
That's right.
We teach them, but when they out on their own, we expect for them to do what we've taught them, but they don't always do it. So we just have to have care and love in our heart. And, you know, because that's what he had clearly, you know, that he was able to help so many people. And we just have to do it. We just have to do what we need to do. And we can't say, where we put it out there and then they didn't get it, blah, blah. Now, sometimes you just got to go the extra mile of the way.
That's true.
To help them to
Just
be
like
able to
this
get it.
lady.
Yeah, and everybody's not savable, but some are.
That's right.
Some are. And
So you
some
have
of
to
them are
try.
just looking for that special attention.
Right.
Or don't even know they need it until they get it.
Mm-hmm.
Until they get it. Exactly.
Well, Miss Taylor, this has been a wonderful discussion.
Okay.
What did
I
we-
have enjoyed it.
The time flew by. I promise you it did. So thank you again for
You are
agreeing to come talk to us about this. And hopefully we'll finish this book together.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in for Sips from the Sipp. Join me next time for a reading of Chapter 4 of William Holtzclaw's book, Black Man's Burden. This program is supported by donations from our listeners. If you enjoy learning about the history of William Holtzclaw, the Utica Institute, and Mississippi, consider donating. To support Sips from the Sipp and all the work at the Utica Institute Museum, visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Utica Institute. Until next time, this has been Jean Greene coming to you from the heart of the Sipp.